in general, I think NFTs, at least like earlier last year, definitely has helped to change a lot of the artists' lives, including mine. I mean, I was able to fund my app because of, you know, the NFTs that I sold. I was able to, progress a lot in my artistry and gain a base of followers and collectors that support me.
Hi everyone, welcome to yet another episode of NewForum. We're always excited to bring you brilliant and inspiring creators, founders, visionaries, and developers on our podcast. And we're powered by Newcoin Foundation, focused on fostering the expansion of decentralized social applications, also known as Social 3.0. And it's our goal to spark informative, educative, and human-centered conversations on the topics of crypto, the metaverse, NFTs, and everything Web3 to ensure the conscious and ethical growth of a new web, embedding the values of care, freedom, and creativity.
And on today's episode, we are super happy to have with us Nina or Ninocence, a multimedia artist, 3D animator, photographer, and filmmaker, transferring in real life people into the metaverse. She has produced work for celebrities such as Rick Ross, DaBAby, Tommy Cash, and many more. And we can't wait to dive deep into the conversation around avatars and digital humans, AI art, fashion photography, music, Web3, and metaverse business ventures in the NFT space. Hey Nina, we're super happy to have you on today.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Nina, I saw a lot of your work on Instagram, and I'm super interested about your journey as a multimedia artist and creator. And maybe you can also tell a bit about your influences and inspirations.
My journey has started a while ago. I have initially been always obsessed with fashion and photography as a child, and was just carrying like a camera, like a little film camera with me all the time at like 6 years old, and like was shooting constantly nonstop, film after film. And that kind of pushed me, later on into modeling and fashion photography and portraiture. So I've been doing that for 12 years, or even 13 maybe by now. And recently, during the lockdown, I've decided to teach myself how to do avatars. And that's been kind of my curiosity, because when I was looking into doing music and like creating a persona for the music brand, I was thinking that the avatar would be really cool a solution. And then all the artists I worked with, mostly like male artists, haven't been really what I was looking for. And I thought that, there won't be a lot of control if I hire someone or like get someone to do it. And so, there was a few avatars that's been made, but I wasn't really inspired by them, or I felt like it didn't really represent me. So during the lockdown, I've kind of dived into it myself and started, learning 3D a little more in depth. I had like a basic 3D, some like very basic 3D knowledge before, because I was doing some interior design as well. But I never utilized it in, creative or art industries. So it was a very new venture for me. And I've always been wanting to try it out, but just didn't have the time with like constantly working and shooting. But I started working on my avatar, and I felt like, all the years of working as a creative director and doing styling and doing fashion photography and portraiture really helped me here to develop a style and develop like a specific look, a specific feel. I've always, like, even in photography, like to make things that are a little uncomfortable for people, that are different and more avant-garde, and like, has like a different style. So even though I've been shooting a lot of commercial work, I've always preferred like a more weird, creepy, but then also like interesting and mysterious work. So that's what I would usually love to focus on, editorial stuff. And I feel like all of that carried over into the art, into 3D art and avatar art as well. And, because of my photography retouching skills, I'm actually utilizing the same principle on my 3D renders when I do the avatars. And I think that's what really helping me to bring out the realism in the avatars as well. So that's like, I think, main of my tricks from the photography world that I really like to utilize. Yeah, and ever since I started doing the avatars, it's become a really amazing and fun journey. And I feel like it's definitely more of a future, considering that right now you can do campaigns on the iPhone, and people are moving away from like the glorious photographers days, and it's not as progressive or innovative anymore as it used to be. So I feel like the 3D world, the avatar world, and digital human world is definitely the future, and makes me super excited.
I gotta say, like, I really admire your work because it's like super high quality, and then the way you just mix different aspects into the, like, you have fashion in there, but you also have like the AI aspect, and you just can see that it looks like super futuristic, and I really appreciate your work. What do you think about the concept of the metaverse? Like, what do you think, how does the metaverse influences your work, maybe?
Yeah, well, actually, before I jumped into the journey of figuring out the avatars, I've been wanting to, create a metaverse before it became like the it world of 2021. Actually, like back in 2019, I was like looking into it, and I didn't know anyone else that's been creating a metaverse at the time. I think maybe I knew of like Sansar, but it was still, not what we would think of. Recently, I have watched like the new Bell anime, and the Ready Player One, because when I think of metaverse, I think of like spaces like that where it's completely immersive, and our avatars are representations of ourselves. Either it's someone that has a similar face, or it could be a completely different creature or animal as well. So I think that is definitely the future of social media, regardless. Like in the next, probably in the next 5 to 10 years, it will escalate significantly. And I'm very curious about that. And I really want to be on the forefront when that happens. And definitely like that sort of, utopia world, but in a positive way, I guess, is definitely, that's been fascinating to me. And based on that, like I always had a dream of making the digital personality more available. Obviously, right now everyone has digital personalities via their Instagrams and social, Twitter, social media. It might be not so much on the on the digital world aspect of that, like on the digital representation, but there's still like every thought that we write down in Twitter, every picture that we edit and select what to post, it definitely creates a new version of ourselves that is different from real life. It's kind of like something that we filter out and what we want to show the people. So I think in that sense the digital human part, or like the digital avatar part, is definitely like a progressed version of that, and it gives more imagination, I think, to the creator. It just shows more aspects of what is their internal world is like, and I think it's very interesting to dive into that, and just kind of like has that fantasy world, like the ability to live in the fantasy world without like transferring somewhere else. We just can I don't know, pop VR headset, which probably in the future won't be as big and bulky as it is right now. So I think the ability of connecting with the digital world will definitely create the possibility of completely transferring our conscious self somewhere else. Yeah, and based on that, I've started my digital avatar incubator, that I call it, the Lilium Labs. And with that, I am working on a social app currently. Well, I'm working on a facial scanning app that will help me create more avatars and scale. And I think I want Lilium Labs to become a metaverse company as well, that helps just bring in everyone from IRL into URL pretty much.
I love that, like you're really taking advantage of like the space that we are entering now into. And I'm wondering, like, what do you think are, like, for artists and creators like yourself, what are like the biggest opportunities? Maybe you could explain a bit, like what kind of tools you've been using in the metaverse. And yeah, we'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so like I've mentioned, I'm developing my own app, and I definitely want that to be the main tool. And that has been kind of my number one focus at the moment. And this app will actually allow people to also utilize the new MetaHuman. So basically, the idea is that currently, in order to make a scan of a person, you need to have hundreds of cameras, that are 360 around you, and those cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to put together. Also, you need the space. It's not as available in terms of like a location. You bound to a location, right? So you can't just like fly someone. You have to fly someone in, or if you want to move the whole setup into another city, it's just too much of a hustle. So I believe in mobility and convenience. In that sense, I think the app makes bigger sense, and we were able to achieve really amazing results that are like, there's less than a millimeter difference in the scan and in the real face. So utilizing the true depth camera, if it's just a few pictures, you can get like an amazing scan of yourself. And the idea is actually that right now I'm using that scan as a morph, let's say either a DAZ Genesis model, or you can also, with the newest MetaHuman update, slap it on a MetaHuman. And I think that is incredible. That is definitely expanding everyone's ability to have an avatar. And the best part is that we also, with my developer, working on a process where, let's say, if we get a contract with like a game provider, a game developer, we can directly send the avatar into the game without needing to have a middleman and create the avatar and etc. So pretty much you just take a scan and you entering yourself as a game. So that's like a main tool that I've been focusing on. And like I've mentioned, other than like taking the scan into DAZ or Unreal, and then utilizing like Marvelous Designer for clothing, and for render like either Octane or Redshift with Cinema, or there's just like the list of the apps never ends. And of course the most important part is if I'm doing stills, would be Photoshop for retouching, or DaVinci for like video editing.
But you also then turn that into NFTs, right? Or
Yes.
how has your NFT journey been? What do you think NFTs can provide for artists and creators?
Well, I personally a huge fan and believer into crypto and NFTs, and I think the new, it's basically the new internet, and it will definitely change the way we interact and shop probably and do things on an everyday basis. Even though currently there's still a lot of speculation, there's still a lot of cash grabs, and a lot of unclear things that are happening, and mainstream communities are still not ready. They just think NFTs are scam or dead, or all of those things. But in general, I think NFTs, at least like earlier last year, definitely has helped to change a lot of the artists' lives, including mine. I was able to fund my app because of the NFTs that I sold. I was able to progress a lot in my artistry, and gain a base of followers and collectors that support me. And the NFT journey, I was surprised, but my Genesis collection has been very successful, I guess, because of like, I've also like the Clubhouse and Twitter, and the in-person meetings really helped to, push that a little bit. But I am very grateful for the NFTs and how it was able to push my career forward. And like not needing to focus on commercial jobs, and just like not needing to take every single job that's out there, but more like being super selective and working only on the strongest ones that I think that will help me progress in my career a lot. So in that sense, I think it's amazing. And the fact that we retain some sort of percentage in perpetuity on any potential sales, and it's all on blockchain, that's great. The only thing I do think that maybe 10% in perpetuity sometimes is not the most fair, because like in the end of the day, some other collector that is able to flip it is retaining 90%, and that's still kind of like a questionable practice. But other than that, I think, obviously it's such a fast growing industry, and it's so fresh and new, and we are just like the 1% still that is, getting into it. So it's so early on that there still will be a lot of new implementations and progresses that will be made. So I think in the long term, it definitely is gonna bloom, and excited for that.
When you say transferring IRL people into the metaverse, what does that entail? What does that mean?
Like I've mentioned, for me, transferring like real people into the metaverse, it's pretty much making them into the avatars, and giving them the new digital personality that they have aside from like their social media, and giving power to people to also express their imagination in a way, with the help of like tools, and like with the help of like the clothes that they can wear, and the hairstyles, and like what the avatar looks like, what are the environments, because currently in order to create the image of ourselves, we're still limited to like budgets and locations and etc. And it's very unsustainable as well. Like currently the Instagram and social media has definitely created this need of like creating more content, but by doing so consuming more things, and it's not the most sustainable, which is why I think digital fashion is really helping people to kind of fill up that hunger a little bit, right? Hunger for new content, hunger for like trying to show off more, hunger to flex. So definitely that's helping the environment, and the ability to try things that you would never try in real life. Like let's say, I mean, I'm a pretty edgy person, and I like extravagant things in my style, but then some people are just not comfortable enough to do that in real life. So I feel like, putting on an outfit that you could never try, like that you're too scared to try in real life, and or like a hairstyle, a hair color, haircut. So that definitely helps people to kind of get out of their shell a little bit more, and maybe once they see it on their avatar, they realize, oh well, maybe it's not that scary, and it helps to like push the boundary of of the fear of like what we can and what we cannot do.
Speaking about avatars, what would you say is the difference between avatars and digital humans, and how do you foresee them becoming an extension? I think we've kind of like touched on it already, but because you've already pretty much explained how it's going to become like an extension of us and our identity. But what would you say are some of the pros and cons or potential unintended consequences with that?
So in terms of the in terms of the difference of the avatar and humans, yeah, I feel like for me the digital human is like the digital twin, right? So like your actual twin, which usually works for like, let's say, celebrities and models, and like people who just want their representation to be themselves, which I think is more interesting to me, because I've worked on a lot of avatar projects that weren't real people, and they were just like fake humans, and while it's very interesting and intriguing, I feel like it doesn't have as much relativity as like bringing in a digital twin of someone, at least like when working on those, because people know this is like fake stories, fake personalities. It still has that eerie uncanny valley feeling to it, either in the face or in the story. So it's still something feels off. But when you utilize a real person and show their digital twin, I think in that sense, it's like the real person is the proof, right, of existence, of its existence, and that it's more sincere and more relatable in the end. And that's why I chose to work mostly on people, on like real people, and bringing them into the metaverse. And I'm actually working on a very interesting, maybe even historic moment project that, making a metaverse division for a real life modeling agency, which is actually quite big. I'm not going to mention the name just yet until the release, but, just working on that. And currently, we probably will be like the first modeling agency that like really does that and releases their real models as avatars. And me and some of my friends will also be signed to that agency. So I think that's quite amazing. And, those are definitely like the cons. of, of having an avatar, I think the main part is that actually, while putting together a contract for these models, like the thought was like, the model itself, the real life model, she won't be able, like, let's say the average estimate of like the lifespan of the career is like until 30, 35, right? But in a good case too. And then like, what if the model decides that she doesn't want to do this anymore, wants to have kids, or et cetera, et cetera. So the beauty of the avatar is that actually they can still capitalize on the asset if the model retires or even dies, passes, and so it can continue on. It's kind of like building a legacy, right? The legacy is continuing on even after the retirement and death, and like for the future generations. Like, let's say if the model is like, if the artist is very famous, let's say like like Michael Jackson, or I think that part is really great. I think if you think about like Frida Kahlo, right, and like Frida Kahlo Foundation, any other artists' foundations, they carry on the legacy of the artists after their death, and like proceeds are going to the foundation, it's just the family and the future generation. I think the avatar will help do that for artists that have their digital twins. That's, I think, the main part. I think there's a lot of perks, like I've said, that you don't have to physically be somewhere for production, and that's a big part of it. And showing more of your imagination, of like what the resources and assets that you want to use that you don't have access to, and with 3D everything is possible. That's like another advantage. In terms of disadvantages, I think we already started having this a bit of a unhealthy habit with with social media and filtering and editing and selection, that obviously everyone is comparing themselves too much, and everyone is trying to have more filters on and more editing. So it just creates unhealthy and toxic self-esteem in that sense, I guess, because people are unhappy with what their real skin looks like, what their body and face looks like, so they want to make more alterations. There's more surgeries that will have people try to look more like what they look with filter on, like. So I think in that sense it's creating unhealthy beauty standards. That is kind of like the main drawback that I see. I think there's like a new social teachings that people are just more, the younger generations that spend more time on like social media are just more depressed overall. So I think that's something not to be taken lightly. And I think personally I really love spending time like really in the zone, in the digital world, like even if it's like just reading manga and playing a game, or like creating new worlds. I just spend a lot of time on a computer, and I guess the drawback is that you don't spend as much time in real life. But you can I guess assume that it's like a parallel universe that you're being a part of, but that means that your real self is more dormant at that time.
So, speaking about all of this, I can help but also ask what is your definition, or what is AI art, and how are machines expanding human creativity?
So to add, by the way, I quickly wanted to add one more disadvantage, is like adding the, keeping your dormant, your real self dormant, is that the social interactions has become just on a different level, especially for newer generations. So I think that's something that also should be added to that list. In terms of the AI art, I think, well, first of all, I've been experimenting like a madman, super obsessed with AI art at the moment. And I have created some of like my favorite artworks, just like, hundreds of them, thousands of them within like a couple days. And that completely blew my mind. It made me feel useless for a second, but also at the same time, like really elevated myself, because I was able to create things that I had in my mind, but I didn't know how to, didn't know the right ways or the right tools, or like, something that would have taken me, I don't know, a week to create, it took me a few minutes or like a few hours, because of like, because of the changing the conditions and expanding, making research, all of that. I guess that should also be taken into consideration. But in the end of the day, if you think of the actual process, once you like create your parameters, your prompts, and from that moment to like pressing process that only takes like minutes. So in that sense, that's incredible. And I have like an interesting thought that like, because we are the creators of the AI, I guess we are like more advanced because we're able to create something that is more superior to ourselves. And even though, currently AI and machine learning are still have a lot of things to work on, and there's still a lot of progress, but also I think something that's the progress is always higher and more developed as what the general public sees. So I think what's available to the regular consumer, it doesn't mean that that's where the progress is at. So that's actually a bit of a dangerous slope, because I think the AI is much more developed than what we think. I have asked the question like on Instagram, and I got some interesting responses, and people are like, why do you think AI is superior? And people just don't really believe where AI is really at, but just seeing even of like how much faster computers are in terms of like creating art and other things, it's definitely undeniable that our creation will surpass its God, which is us. Yeah, it's very fascinating. And there's also a lot of eerie things, because okay, there will be less jobs for humans, but AI will replace a lot of humans, but at the same time it will help maybe work on other areas, and things that are very let's say very particular and take a lot of time. Obviously it's much better to have it automated, and in that sense I think it's very helpful. It's going a little sad in this conversation with AI. I mean, yeah. I think it's a very dangerous slope, because it's very exciting but also could turn dangerously. Also it's all about unfortunately in the end, like in whose hands in the end of the day it is, and like how they're going to utilize it. Unfortunately, as we know, like most of the world is still very patriarchatic, I guess, if that's a word. Obviously, and men are also more violent, and have more need for power, and in that sense men are more likely to start wars and do weapons. So that's the dangerous parts. But if you think of like AI as its own, I don't think they really have a need to exterminate us as humans, as a race, because I don't think they think like human beings in that sense. But it's when you train an AI, it's very important of like what are the social norms, I guess, are, because that's what the AI is learning. It's just like with human children. It's all about who is the nanny, like who are the teachers, who are the parents, how they teach the child. Similar with AI, I'm bringing this point up because like currently AI is utilizing its main knowledge base, let's say, on like search engines like Google, and what's publicly out there. But then the problem that we see, let's say, most of the times when you put like, let's say, Asian woman in search, like most of the things that come out more related to like, let's say, pornographic imagery or something like that. And obviously, if you base your understanding of what things are based on Google or in public information, that's where it gets tricky, right? How do you explain to AI that it's not only like used for certain stereotypical topics? I guess I hope that answered.
No, it answered it very, very well. I mean, I think I've always shied away or been kind of skeptical about artificial intelligence, but it can definitely help humanity in so many ways, right? Like you said, it depends on whose hand is in. And I feel like there's this mindset of who gets to make the better AI, kind of, when we think of the metaverse and everything, and that's sort of where I get a bit concerned, like who wants, like everybody's, it's almost like a competition, right? In a way, and I think that we have to think about the ethical side, and not just, innovation is good, but for me, whenever I think about the potential of all these amazing technologies, I just think about how can they make our lives better, as humans. How can they add value to our lives? How can they make somebody, like in terms of taking jobs away? Okay, if it's gonna do those jobs that are more like chemical related, because there are people who end up getting cancer because they worked in this kind of factory. So maybe these machines could do that type of jobs, but then we have to, whoever is putting these AIs there should also think about what's the alternative for people who didn't get the chance to get the education or the vocational skills that they needed, right, to be self-sufficient. What else can we offer those people? So I feel like as the AIs are replacing, we should also think of how can we make up for the people who were in those kind of like spaces or jobs, kind of.
I'm just thinking about that, like what would we do if let's say we wouldn't need to work, and let's say we live, instead of living in like a super a utopian society, how they portray it in the movies, where it's very destructive and like AI is overtaking the world. What if actually we live in a very progressed community that where everyone lives in abundance and wealth, and no one really needs to work, and AI is doing the jobs, then we are able to create more, and maybe together with AI, and it feels like a shortcut, but at the same time, it's the things that we learn and how we educate ourselves and how we develop our taste and our aesthetics. Those things are important, and those things what will differentiate someone's one AR art between like someone who never has done art before, right? So I think it's still important to continue our education, and I think we'll take more time to like actually appreciate the real world and meditate more. I don't know, spend more time in nature. That was like part of the reason I wanted to get into the other self. Actually, is like I was just getting so busy with work, and I've constantly, like, let's say, wanted to shoot, but didn't really wanted to retouch and edit. So my idea was like, oh, maybe I will create a second version of myself, like a clone of myself that is digital and is like, let's say, learning or, doing all the computer work, all the that kind of work while I'm out there, networking or going onto social gatherings and like things where I need to do face to face. So that's also part of the inspiration for the digital humans, and long-term goal, I guess, for my companies to create also not only have the avatars as like content, like pictures and images that we put on Instagram or video games, but also maybe we can create personalities by like having AI chats and assigning those personalities to your avatar, and then having a social media for the avatars where they can communicate and add friends, socialize, basically. I mean, it's interesting.
I love this. I'm just thinking about the AI that could do my homework I have 2 AIs that do my homework, 3 AIs that help me with my creative projects. And I feel it's a very interesting thought, because when I think about AI, especially like what you said, it can be a pretty scary thought about that. But if we think about, okay, how can it take up jobs that we might not want to do or that are pretty hard for humans, and then we can focus more on the creativity of building better systems, of being more sustainable, of all these things. And I think you pointed out a really interesting view on this. I'm just wondering, what do you think? For me, there's this notion right now that content used to be very original and, very like fashion content, and in general, like photography, pictures, like you said yourself, has been very original, and kind of the craft has been taken away a bit. What do you think about how do you think about AI generated art in that sense? Like, how can we make sure that not every content is going to be the same, or, like, I'm wondering what's your thoughts on that?
Well, at the moment, AI art, in the end of the day, is still driven by humans. Like, we had these conversations a lot, actually, with my boyfriend, who we were like together, creating art with and creating AI and like just obsessing over it. And we were thinking like, what's the difference, right? Like, if AI can create art, like, why do we need artists, right? But in the end of the day, AI is still utilizing the database that's out there. It's utilizing what's already been created and making it into something new. But then, like, if we don't create anything else, then the progress will stop there. So I think that's why it's important to keep going and create your own personal style, continue making yourself. I mean, I guess the goal in here is just to create it to become your personal style to become that big where AI can utilize your style and create new art, even though that's a lot of people consider like stealing, plagiarism, and etc. It's still I guess it's kind of like leading by example, in that sense. And in terms of content quality, I think we'll never have control over it. I mean, even now there's still like a lot of content that's just still like we have to filter through it, and it's all about like what we select, what we decide to surround ourselves with, right? Like the followers that we have, the people that we follow, the algorithm then gives you similar things, right? So in the end of the day, we're selecting what we want to be surrounded by. Same with art and fashion, and based on that. But some people, they just don't have like the knowledge of things. Like they don't really know, let's say, the fashion world as much. Or the art world as much, so they don't know like even on the basic terms, they don't know who to follow. They don't know who to read, right? They don't know what books to read and magazines to research on. So in that sense, like always, someone will have more sophisticated path because they just took more time to learn and have a different taste. But then someone or like let's say they were born into a better family with more access to that information. But then if I think in that sense, like everyone has access to information, so it's more like of taking the time to do R&D, to do the research, and it will be accessible. But someone has like faster access, I guess, to information, and someone don't, like let's say comparing to people in first world countries and third world countries, right? That's a huge difference. But I think the beauty of it, like let's say the art things that are coming out of China, let's say, are incredible now. Like one of the best new designers and photographers and 3D artists are coming from there, actually, because they've been so repressed for so many years and they actually didn't have the access to internet. And now that they do, they start having like more fresher ideas because they haven't had that, in that sense. I think that's fascinating. I'm curious, like, and like we were talking about that, like let's say people in Africa, like there's a school project that people I know are working with, and like my boyfriend has went to that school and seen how they build it together, and like they're raising the funds, they have sponsors, they co-sponsored it, and it's open for volunteers to come in. So obviously in their world it's different. It's really far from like digital fashion and all these things that we're talking about. But then they're slowly starting, and if you think about what has happened is, and how like this comparison has created a lot of depression and unhappiness, because people, let's say in Asia, are just living a simple life where they just eat like a banh mi and sleep on a motorcycle and they're happy. But then once they start seeing that, oh, someone has like a mansion, and they start comparing, that makes them unhappy. So but let's say people in Africa has less access right now to the internet and social media. They don't even have like internet or computers or knowledge how to use that. So at least I'm just talking on the example of those kids in that school. So it's important to help them develop as well, and like educate them, and that's what that school's mission has been. But also like it's very interesting to see what their interpretation of like the art and fashion will be once they get caught up, right?
Overall, what's your view on Web3, and are you content with the way the space is evolving? And are there any areas that needs improving when it comes to the evolution of the creator, or should I say creative economy? And also, what do you look forward to the most in Web3, and what keeps you going in this ever-changing or evolving space?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think in general, I'm very excited about Web3. It's definitely, the new internet, and hopefully will help a lot of things happen. Hopefully, again, with more control of people rather than like, the centralized entities like the government, the banks, church, and other things, right? Like, I love how they've explained decentralization in a way where, if you look at the religion, the centralized way is when you have a church. So you go to church to pray to God, but decentralized way is when you meditate and you talk to God directly. You don't need a pope, right? So really love that comparison, and I think that's the beauty, that's the main beauty of Web3 and decentralization. And of course, the government understands that it's out of their control, and they slowly try to like put regulations on it to make sure that it doesn't get out of the control. But I feel like it will still help people to take some of the power back. So that's really great. What I'm still a little bit feel uneasy. Why I still feel a bit uneasy about, there's still a lot of very specific, I guess, stereotypical audience. Let's say it's very, you know, there's the bro culture is very promoted, and still very not as open-minded, you know, towards gay, LGBT, in general, LGBT trends and etc. Queer communities, or female communities. It's very chauvinistic. It's if you think about the numbers, you know, they say only 5% of the overall sales in the end go to females. And there's a lot of you know, people and just regular companies taking advantage of artists as well. So that's like something that's like you see in a normal world as well. And some of those carry out into the Web3 space. And you know, I work a lot with like Unicorn DAO that are trying to solve those issues. And in myself, in my personal work, I've always pushed for female empowerment, and how can we work through objectification of female and her sexuality and how she expresses herself. Like, I think those topics are very important. So I try to touch on that as well, and maybe in more extravagant way, but in the end, I think it will bring out more attention to the topic. Yeah, I think art is a very powerful way to start a conversation and bring attention to something in that sense. And that's why it's exciting that NFT really progressed in the art world first. That's great. And in terms of what I'm looking forward to, I think from what we've seen so far, like, let's say, you know, in the NFT space, it's kind of like a common practice and common knowledge. Like, if, you know, you're doing really well with your collection, you know, with selling your art, then like take a small percentage of that and buy more art, you know, of the next artist as well. And what I've been doing, and you know, a lot of people that I know are doing that as well. So I think the beauty of that is you know, redistribution of wealth within the educated I guess population. So in my sense is that it really gives the power to people who are smart. And in that sense, that means that it's just like there will be more progress. And I think that's beautiful, because like in real life world, not every smart like, you know, if you see at the people who were able to gain wealth, it's not always, you know, the smartest people. And it's sometimes like people who have like very silly views. I guess in that sense, the intellect is not necessarily what showcases how wealth is distributed. In that sense, I'm excited that NFTs and Web3 are helping the more intellectual people and smart people to take control and change their lives and have build out more wealth, because our generation has so much less opportunities that the previous generations. You know, the housing prices and all the other prices is just like through the roof, and we're making much less money than the generation before. So I think that's important. That's just like one new opportunity for our generation to be able to build wealth. But at the same time, yeah, the other problem is that people that already have the money and people that have access to education, of course, are more prioritized than people that do not. And in the end, it's like, you know, repeating that cycle of people who are getting in early and who already have the wealth, they can, you know, make that wealth exponentially increase. So that's also at the same time a plus and a drawback.
Perfectly said. One thing that's really stood out for me when you are speaking is to be present in the real world, like in the real world, because when you're healthy in the real world, then you can also be happier in the digital space, right? Because we exist in the real world, because we're real human beings. So thank you so much for all this. And I'm wondering, where can our community find you and our audience? Because I know you're working on this fashion, was it the model avatar thing with the fashion agency? And for me, I want to like follow you to figure out, to kind of like see where that goes. So if you could share your social platforms, that'd be awesome.
Pretty much all social platforms is just Ninocence. It's spelled like innocence, but N in front of I. People usually have a bit of problems spelling this the word out, but it's, if you think of word innocence and just like the N in front of I guess that's kind of simple. Same on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, whatever else, SoundCloud, Spotify. It's all Ninocence. Also my website. Currently, I have like 3 websites: ninocence.ai or ninahawkins.com or liliumlabs.xyz. Those are also like more outlets to peek even deeper into what I do. But currently ninocence.ai has like so many links to look into.
Thank you so much, Nina. Like, this was so good. I feel like really refreshed by this conversation, and I feel like I have like super new insights on like what I think about this whole space. And I think that was really necessary, and I know our community is going to enjoy this one. So thank you so much. And thank you all for being part of today's forum. If you guys want to get more involved with what we're doing, make sure to follow us on our social platforms. We are NewForum_NCO and also NewCoin. And we also have a Discord. Please feel free to join. We're going to drop the links all in the bio, as well as Nina's links. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next episode of NewForum. Thank you, Selini, and thank you, Nina, and we see you soon.